Hey, y'all, welcome back. This is Tony, the Black Girl Who Reads. Welcome back to this podcast episode. We're in chapter number 7 of the book, The Blue Castle. Like I said, this is going to be awesome. I am sure. I cannot wait because I'm excited about reading this book because I want to see what's going to happen with Valancy. So I'm hoping you're here for the same thing. So like I said, definitely be sure to, of course, subscribe, to, of course, follow along with the story and to hear what happens and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure it's going to be some drama at some point because she already standing up for herself for different things. Even though they're small, it does not matter. She's still standing up. That's where it starts. So, like I said, let's go ahead and get into this, y'all. This is chapter number 7, The Blue Castle. And this is, of course, the reading aloud. Let's go ahead and get on into this. And, of course, again, be sure to, of course, subscribe and tell somebody about the podcast as well. So, let's go ahead and get into it. There was a rose bush. I'm trying to get my camera right. I think I got it. I think. Okay. There was a rose bush on the little Stirling lawn, growing beside the gate. It was called Dawson's rose bush. Cousin Georgiana had given it to Valancy 5 years ago, and Valancy had planted it joyfully. She loved roses, but of course the rose bush never blossomed. That was her luck. Valancy did everything she could think of and took the advice of everybody in the clan, but still the rose bush would not bloom. It throve and grew luxuriantly with great leafy branches untouched of rust or spider, but not even a bud had ever appeared on it. Valancy, looking at it 2 days after her birthday, was filled with a sudden overwhelming hatred for it. The thing wouldn't bloom very well, then she would cut it down. She marched to the tool room in the barn for her garden knife, and she went at the rose bush viciously. A few minutes later, horrified Miss Frederick came out to the veranda and beheld her daughter slashing insanely among the rosebush boughs. Half of them were already strewn on the sidewalk. The bush looked sadly dismantled. "Doss, what on earth are you doing? Have you gone crazy?" "No," said Valancy. She meant to say it defiantly, but habit was too strong for her. She said it deprecatingly. I just made up my mind to cut this bush down. It is no good and never blossoms, never blooms, never will bloom." "That is no reason for destroying it," said Miss Frederick sternly. "It was a beautiful bush and quite ornamental. You have made a sorry-looking thing out of it." "Rose trees should bloom," said Valancy a little obstinately. "Don't argue with me, Doss. Clear up that mess and leave that bush alone. I don't know what Georgiana will say when she sees how you have hacked it to pieces. Really, I'm surprised at you. And to do it without consulting me." "The bush is mine," muttered Valancy. "What's that? What did you say, Dawes?" "I said the bush was mine," said Valancy humbly. Miss Frederick turned without a word and marched back into the house. The mischief was done now. Valancy knew she had offended her mother deeply, and will not be spoken to or noticed in a way for 2 or 3 days. Cousin Stickles will see that Valancy bringing up, but Miss Frederick would preserve the stony silence of outraged majesty. Valancy sighed and put away her garden knife, hanging it precisely on its precise nail in the tool shop. She cleared away the severed branches and swept up the leaves. Her lips twitched as she looked at the straggling bush. It had an odd resemblance to a shaken, scrawny donor, little cousin Georgiana herself. "I certainly made an awful-looking thing of it," Valancy thought. But she did not feel repentant, and only sorry she had offended her mother. Things would be so uncomfortable until she was forgiven. Miss Frederick was one of those women who can make their anger felt all over the house. Walls and doors are no protection from it. And I know people like that. Lord have mercy. "You better go uptown and get the mail," said Cousin Stickles when Valancy went in. "I can't go. I feel all sort of peaky and piney this spring. I want you to stop at the drugstore and get me a bottle of Red Fern's Blood Bitters. There is nothing like Red Fern's bitters for building a body up. Cousin James says the purple pills are the best, but I know better. My poor dear husband took Red Fern's bitters right up to the day he died. Don't let them charge you more than 90 cents. I can get it for that at the port. And what have you've been saying to your poor mother? Do you ever stop to think, Doss, that you can only have one mother? One is enough for me, thought Valancy undutifully as she went uptown. She got Cousin Stickles both of bitters. She got Cousin Stickles' bottle of bitters, and then she went to the post office and asked for her mail at the general delivery. Her mother did not have a box. They got too little mail to bother with it. Valancy did not expect any mail except the Christian Times, which was the only paper they took. They hardly ever got any letters. But Valancy rather liked to stand in the office and watch Miss Carew, I guess, the gray bearded Santa Clausy old clerk, handing out letters to the lucky people who did get them. He did it with such a detached, impersonal, Jove-like air, as if it did not matter in the least to him what supernal joys or shattering horrors might be in those letters for the people to whom they were addressed. Letters had a fascination for Valancy, perhaps because she so seldom got any. Drink some water, y'all. In her Blue Castle exciting epistles bound with silk and sealed with crimson were always being brought to her by pages in livery of gold and blue. But in real life, her only letters were occasionally perfunctory notes from relatives or an advertising circular. Consequently, she was immensely surprised when Mr. Carew, looking even more jovial than usual, poked a letter out to her. Yes, it was addressed to her plainly in fierce black hand. Miss Valancy Stirling, Elm Street, Deerwood, and the postmark was Montreal. Valancy picked it up with a little quickening of her breath. Montreal? It must be from Dr. Trent. The postmark was Montreal. Valancy picked it up with a little quickening of her breath. Okay, I read that. He remembered her after all. Valancy met Uncle Benjamin coming in as she was going out and was glad the letter was safely in her bag. What? Said Uncle Benjamin. It's the difference between a donkey and a postage stamp. I don't know what, said Valancy dutifully. Once you lick with the stick, and the other you stick with the lick. Ha ha. Okay, I guess. Uncle Benjamin passed in, tremendously pleased with himself. Cousin Stickles pounced on the Times when Valancy got home, but it did not occur to her to ask if there were any letters. Miss Frederick would have asked it, but Miss Frederick's lips at the present were sealed. Valancy was glad of this. If her mother had asked if there were any letters, Valancy would have to admit there was. Then she would have had to let her mother and Cousin Stickles read the letter, and all would be discovered. Her heart ached strangely on the way upstairs, and she sat down by her window for a few minutes before opening her letter. She felt very guilty and deceitful. She had never before kept a letter secret from her mother. Every letter she had ever written or received had been read by Miss Frederick. That had never mattered. Valancy had never had anything to hide, but this did matter. She could not have anyone see this letter, but her fingers trembled with the consciousness of wickedness and unfiliable conduct as she opened it. Trembled a little, too, perhaps, with apprehension. Uh-oh. My bad. Where am I at? She felt quite sure there was nothing seriously wrong with her heart, but one never knows. Dr. Trent's letter was like himself, blunt, abrupt, concise, wasting no words. Dr. Trent never beat about the bush. Dear Miss Stirling, and then a page of black, positive writing. Valancy seemed to read it at a glance. She dropped it on her lap, her face ghost white. Dr. Trent told her she had a very dangerous and fatal form of heart disease. Oh, wow. Angina pectoris, evidently complicated with an aneurysm, whatever that was, and in the last stages. He said without mincing matters that nothing could be done for her. If she took great care of herself, she might live a year, but she might also die at any moment. Dr. Trent never troubled himself about euphemisms. She must be careful to avoid all excitement and all severe muscular efforts. She must eat and drink moderately. She must never run. She must go upstairs and uphill with great care. Wow. Any sudden joke or shock may be fatal. She was to get the prescription he enclosed, filled, and carry it with her always, taking a dose whenever attacks came on, and he was hers truly, H.B. Trent. Wow. Now this took a turn that I wasn't even expecting, y'all. For her to be diagnosed with some kind of deathly illness and maybe had a year to live. Oh my gosh. Wow, this is getting interesting. I must say, very interesting actually. Wow. Wow. She was tired of sitting at the window. She went over and lay down on her bed, staring at the cracked, discolored ceiling. The curious numbness that followed on a staggering blow possessed her. She did not feel anything except the boundless surprise and incredulity behind which was the conviction that Dr. Trent knew his business and that she, Valancy Stirling, who have never lived, was about to die. When the gong rang for support, Valancy got up and went downstairs mechanically from force of habit. She wondered that she had been let alone so long. But of course her mother would not pay any attention to her just now. Valancy was thankful for this. She thought the quarrel over the rose bush had been really, as Miss Frederick herself might have said, providential. She could not eat anything, but both Miss Frederick and Cousin Stickles thought this was because she was deservedly unhappy over her mother's attitude, and her lack of appetite was not commented on. Valancy forced herself to swallow a cup of tea and then sat and watched the others eat, with an odd feeling that years had passed since she had sat with them at the dinner table. She found herself smiling inward to think what a commotion she could make if she chose. Let her merely tell them what was in Dr. Trent's letter, and there would be as much fuss made as if Valancy thought bitterly they really cared 2 strands about her. Dr. Trent's housekeeper got word from him today, said Cousin Stickles, so suddenly that Valancy jumped guiltily. Was there anything in thought waves? Miss Judd was taking her uptown. They think her son will recover, but Dr. Trent wrote that if he did, he was going to take him abroad as soon as he was able to travel and wouldn't be back here for a year at least. That will not matter much to us, said Miss Frederick majestically. He is not our doctor. I would not. Here she looked and seemed to look accusingly right through Valancy. Have him to doctor a sick cat. Maybe I go upstairs and lay down, said Valancy faintly. I have a headache. What has given you a headache, said Cousin Stickles. Since Miss Frederick would not. The question had to be asked. Valancy could not be allowed to have headaches without interference. You ain't in the habit of having headaches. I hope you're not taking the mumps. Here, try a spoonful of vinegar. Ew. Like, oh my goodness. Piffle, said Valancy rudely, getting up from the table. She did not care just then if she were rude. She had to be so polite all her life. If it had been possible for Cousin Stickles to turn pale, she would have. As it was not, she turned yellower. Are you sure you ain't feverish, Doss? You sound like it. You go and get right into bed, said Cousin Stickles, thoroughly alarmed, and I'll come up and rub your forehead and the back of your neck with red furnace liniment. Valancy had reached the door, but she turned. I won't be rubbed with red furnace liniment, she said. Cousin Stickles stared and gasped. What? What do you mean? I said I wouldn't be rubbed with red furnace liniment, said Valancy. Horrid, sticky stuff, and it was the vilest smell of any liniment I ever saw. It was no good. I want to be left alone, that's all. Valancy went out, leaving Cousin Stickles aghast. She's feverish, she must be feverish, ejaculated Cousin Stickles. Miss Frederick went on eating her supper. It did not matter Valancy was not feverish. Valancy had been guilty of impertinence to her. Ooh, y'all, this is taking a turn that I wasn't even expecting. Let me know in the comments your thoughts. I don't even know what to think right now. I'm just like, okay, she hadn't even got married. She had all this stuff that she wants to do. And she's not even 30 years old yet, but she just got given a death sentence, basically, of a year to live, possibly a year to live, if she keeps herself healthy with this heart issue that she has going on. Whew. And I see she's speaking up for herself now because she's like, I got to live my life is what it sounds like at this point. So like I said, let me know in the comments what y'all think about this chapter, y'all. This has been quite a turn of events, I must say. So join me again for chapter number 8, y'all. This is Tony, the Black Girl Who Reads. This has been a heck of a chapter. Woo, like I said, let me know what y'all think in the comments. Peace out, y'all, and make sure y'all subscribe. I'll see y'all in the next episode.